In our last section on the nervous system, we are going to talk about how the nervous system codes and processes information. Qualitative information about taste or hearing depends on which neurons fire. These neurons always carry the same information. This is called labeled line code. The only thing that travels on that neuron is sensory information about taste, or sensory information about hearing. So the brain knows that if anything is coming in on that fiber, it must be information about that specific sense. Quantitative information that has an amplitude depends on different neurons having different threshold. Weak stimuli excites only specific neurons, whereas stronger stimuli causes a more rapid firing rate. So the neuron fires more rapidly and sends more action potentials. So the central nervous system is able to judge how big the stimulus is based on the firing frequency of those sensory neurons. A neural pool is a group of interneurons that share a specific body function. For instance, control of the rhythm of breathing. We have a couple different zones in a neural pool. In a facilitated zone, we must have more than one input in order to cause firing. They only make it easier for the postsynaptic cell to fire. They do not always make it fire. However, in a discharge zone, as you see in the middle, a single cell can produce firing of the postsynaptic cell. Serial processing is an all or none process where the signal goes from one neuron to the next down the line. Reflex pathways are a serial process. In a reflex pathway, the stimulus comes in on an afferent neuron, goes through an interneuron, and then goes out through an efferent neuron from one to the next. However, in parallel processing, the inputs branch to many pathways. So smell can come in and not only trigger the conscious awareness of that smell, but it can also trigger emotions, memories, and salivation because of the branching pattern. This parallel processing is required for higher level processing. We have a few types of neural circuits that we'll introduce here and discuss more when we talk about memory. A diverging circuit is when one cell synapses on another cell that synapses on another cell. This causes an amplification of signal. This is like a phone tree where one person calls two friends and they each call two friends and they each call two friends, and pretty soon the gossip has made it all the way around the neighborhood. A converging circuit is when you have input from many fibers onto one neuron, for instance in the respiratory center. The respiratory center receives information from the motor centers in the brain about what our body is doing. It receives information from the chemoreceptors that tell it about carbon dioxide and oxygen content of the blood, and it receives information from other joint proprioceptors. And all of that gets put together and assimilated into an output, basically how fast we breathe. The converging circuit concentrates input. A reverberating circuit is when neurons stimulate each other in a linear sequence, but one cell re-stimulates the first cell to start the process all over again. Sometimes this is also called an oscillating circuit. This type of circuit controls rhythmic activity like breathing, where you breathe in and out, sleep-wake cycles, and walking, where it's left, right, left, right. So the key here is reverberating circuits deal with rhythmic activity. We also have parallel after discharge circuits. These circuits involve one neuron stimulating several pathways which stimulate the output neuron to go on firing for a longer time after the input is truly stopped. So it takes a slightly different amount of time for the signal to go through each of these pathways, and therefore that signal arrives at the output neuron at different times and causes more than one output action potential from one single action potential in the input neuron. So this is called parallel after discharge, parallel pathways of different lengths. The disease we're going to talk about in this section is multiple sclerosis. This is a progressive destruction of the myelin sheath in the central nervous system. It is more common in females between the ages of 20 to 40 and in Caucasians. It is an autoimmune disorder where plaques develop and impair nerve impulses. This is a relapsing remitting disease, which means individuals with multiple sclerosis may go for a long period of time where they have no progression of the disease, and then they'll have a period of time where the disease rapidly progresses. There is heaviness and weakness in the muscles and abnormal sensations as well. One of the treatments that can be used in multiple sclerosis is a beta interferon treatment that interferes with the autoimmune system, destroying the myelin sheath. And that wraps up our discussion of the nervous system.